What is self-care insights from a teenager? Well, this week I was talking with my daughter, Zelia, and we're talking about the perspective of self-care from a teenager versus the entrepreneur adult. And it was quite an interesting conversation, and it was really cool. It's kind of interesting the differences from a teenager's perspective to an entrepreneur, an adult. And you know what? As an entrepreneur, we need to take care of ourselves, because of all the business demands and life, family demands. Our self care has to look a little bit different than the teenagers, which is, they have to. What I'm learning right now with that conversation is they need to build the habits that are sustainable in order to build resilience at the same time. So the self care is slightly different because they have different types of pressure. Um, so, I went on to Perplexity and I kind of asked a couple questions, and I kind of like this definition of self care. It's the intentional practice of activities and habits that preserve and enhance physical, mental, and emotional well being. I really like that. Remember the term intentional. You have to be intentional to do self care, not just it just happens naturally. It doesn't. The point is being intentional so you can do that rejuvenation and recoup your energy. So my definition was kind of loosey goosey. Excuse me. Little actually a little less structured than this definition, and then Zelia's definition was along the same lines. But again, just listen to the differences between the entrepreneurial adult and the teenage kid. Hers was a little bit more around the friends and the environment in relation to school. And reflecting back at her age, I think it was along the same lines. I would have done the self care if I would have understood that concept of self care. Because when I was a kid, you're not supposed to take care of yourself, do everything for everything else, and just work through it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And again, the biggest thing I've really learned over the last 3 years is I did not do any self care for me. As much as I thought I did, I was doing stuff that was fun. It was never truly for me, it was always for everyone else. And for me, I really realized sometimes that alone time to rejuvenate, recuperate, it's, we need to make sure that that's there and that we can, that isolation and being by yourself is also very key. So, okay, since every day is constant bombardment of decisions and challenges and cluster whatever, okay, it's very important that we do self-care and the intentional self-care, not just, oh, we'll see, I have time, or I'll plan to kind of do it on the weekend, see what happens. No, we have to be intentional. In the ADHD brain, we need to schedule it, because if it's not in our schedule, we won't remember, or we'll find something else to do. And if we kind of keep it and create a habit, that really helps as well. For me, it's reading. I actually schedule time to work in my wood shop, because if it's not on my calendar, I forget about it. And I get home, I get wrapped up with the kids, I get wrapped up with whatever, blah, 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 blah. I start reading a book, and then next thing I know is 4 hours later. So scheduling, and it's not a weakness. It's just, it makes it happen, and it really works well for me. Okay, so self-care for entrepreneurs versus teens. I thought there was a really cool conversation and discussion about that. And there is a difference between the entrepreneurial adult and teenagers. We have to manage stresses, business stresses, which affects our physical wellness and affects our mental balance. Okay. Because of the high demands of your business, of your staff, your team, and your clients, that's just part of the puzzle. Now you got your home stresses, that's another added level of stress, and or just has another level of demand on your mental energy, right? So you got your spouse, you have your kids, you have your house, you have your financial debts, and then you got your extended family, and then your friends. So being entrepreneurs, our level of stress and extra mental energy being required is higher than the status quo. And that's a reality. And we need to maintain. That's why self-care is very important, because if we don't, we have burnout. Mental burnout is what's really causing the biggest problems with entrepreneurs. It's not really discussed. Everyone thinks mental health, it's a condition, it's anxiety, it's the depression and whatnot, but just mental fatigue and burnout is very important to manage and stress. So that's why self-care is very important. Even if you just do nothing for 2 hours, that just rejuvenates your mental energy, separates the work decision making. Very, very important to maintain. So we just said the entrepreneurs, it's all about physical wellness, maintain mental balance, and then managing your business stress. Okay, now for kids, the teenagers, they have another added wellness that's required as separate from us. Now, it's not that it's related, it's we need to take care of this too, but it's very more prominent with the kids now these days. So digital wellness was on top of the list. Okay. They have to develop sustainable self-care habits in order to build resilience. Okay. So a lot of things, examples that Zydia was explaining about how she's taking care of herself and doing self-care, and for her to realize taking care of number one, herself, is key over others, and to be okay with that was very inspiring for me. And I didn't realize that everything that she was applying and using was because of myself and my wife's coaching to her on how to take care of herself, and to say number one is you, and you got to take care of yourself. So the kids do listen and observe, and especially if you're practicing that, they will see that and live it. And that's our role as the parents, to teach kids self-care habits, and it becomes a routine. And then, you know what, if I would have learned this as a kid or as a teenager, my mental burnout probably would be better managed. And imagine having that skill instilled in you at a very young age. And what could we have? No, so what is she preventing right now by having these talents and unique ability, not unique ability, sorry, these self-care practices? I think it's really something that's needed to teach our kids and to do it. But the thing is, too, at the same time, it's just because you want to take care of self-care, we need to do self-care so that we're taking care of ourselves for mental energy rejuvenation, to calm down, separate ourselves, and enjoy life. That's the main thing. We can't use self-care as the excuse to get away from adversity and challenges. And I think that's what a lot of kids are doing. This is what a lot of parents are allowing to happen. So there's a very fine line to say, hey, no, you can't go away. You can't go have a break, a mental break, because you're actually running away from a situation or any adversity that you need to take care of. So there's a very fine balance. You don't want to push too hard that they've shut down, but they need to build resilience in face of adversity, not just allowed to run away and use self-care as an excuse. But at the same time, that fine balance is that we need to teach the kids that it's okay to say, I need a break for self-care. And kids just do what they do best. They'll do whatever that is best for them and it's easiest for them. And then run away from adversity is very easy. And it is part of self-care. But removing yourself from an intense situation to rejuvenate is one thing, but to remove yourself from adversity, to run away and not deal with it, those are two different things. And that actually impacts your mental health. Run away and not dealing with shit affects your mental health long-term. And that could be a problem 30, 40 years down the road. You hold it, you start having emotional dysregulation issues because of stuff you didn't want to deal with at the time, or the kids did not learn or be allowed to deal with resilience, because resilience is earned. You can't just learn it from a book. You have to go through adversity to build resilience. And I think that's a very important thing to do at a young age. You need to teach the kids how to deal with adversity. And honestly, that will help with their mental health long term. So there's a difference between run away from your challenge versus stepping away for self-care. So I thought there was a fantastic conversation with Zydia. I was really impressed at how well-spoken she is, and that she's putting herself number one, and she's done it over other friends because she needed to do it. It was not easy for her, but it's important. And we need to do that ourselves as entrepreneurs and friends. If you don't take care of yourself, it's hard to take care of the family and your team. So thanks again for listening. And I'd like to hear from you what your self-care practices are, your intentional self-care practices. You can email me at andretheImpulsiveThinker.com. I would love to hear from it. And thanks again for learning with me. And we'll talk to you soon.